My name is Aaron Whitaker, and I was 34 when my father chose my brother's 299 guest wedding to remind everyone that I was still the family disappointment. He raised his champagne glass, praised his favorite son for honoring loyalty and tradition, then turned toward me with a smile that made several guests shift in their seats. "So, when's your turn?" he asked. A few people laughed. My mother stared at her plate. My brother leaned back as if he had been waiting for the joke. I smiled and said, "Why don't you ask your favorite son?" His face went pale. The bride stopped smiling. My father lowered his glass. "What is she talking about?" I placed one sealed envelope beside my plate. "Ask him what happened to the invitation you never received." My father looked from the envelope to his son. "What, you threw it away?" The ballroom became so quiet I could hear ice settling inside the water glasses. "Before I tell you what he threw away, and why he thought no one would ever discover it, tell me what the weather is like where you are, and which city you're watching from. I want to see how far this family secret travels 8 months before that reception." I still believed my family could disappoint me without completely betraying me. Grant Whitaker was 2 years older, and our father Richard treated him like the future of the family had arrived in human form. Grant was the athlete, the business school graduate, and the son Dad introduced before anyone asked. Whenever Grant entered a room, Dad straightened his shoulders. Whenever I achieved something, Dad reduced it to a practical detail. Grant earned applause. I earned recognition only after someone remembered I was there. Our mother Diane rarely insulted me directly. She translated cruelty into something I was expected to forgive. When Dad mocked my career, she said he came from a different generation. When Grant mocked my used sedan, she said brothers teased their sisters. When they forgot my birthday dinner for Grant's golf event, she told me not to make everyone uncomfortable over a scheduling mistake. In our family, I was not allowed to feel injured unless the person who hurt me agreed the injury was real. I moved to Milwaukee and built a life that did not require their approval. I became a senior records governance and ISCO recovery specialist for a medical device manufacturer. My work involved legal holds, retention systems, access histories, and audit trails. When regulators or attorneys needed to know who opened a file, changed a record, or deleted an email, my team reconstructed the sequence. We documented timestamps, preserved evidence, and separated suspicion from facts. Dad told relatives that I organized computer folders for a living. Grant laughed harder than anyone. I stopped correcting them because people committed to minimizing me would only misuse the explanation. Grant joined Dad's commercial real estate brokerage in Neepville after graduate school. His title changed often, but his real skill was charming executives at golf events. Dad promised everyone Grant would eventually run the company. Grant mocked my apartment, my practical car, and my relationship with Noah Bennett, an employment attorney I had dated for nearly 3 years. When Grant asked whether Noah represented real companies or only angry employees, Noah calmly answered that he represented whichever side followed the law. Grant disliked him from that moment. Noah and I did not want a ballroom wedding. We chose a civil ceremony in Doe County with 14 guests, a lakeside dinner, and a retired judge who had mentored him, despite everything. I invited Dad, Mom, and Grant. I sent a certified package to their office because all 3 spent time there. Inside were separate invitations, hotel information, and a handwritten letter telling my parents we wanted them with us. I also emailed the details to their personal addresses and Dad's office account. Noah asked why I used certified mail. I said I wanted proof the package arrived. The truth was that I had spent my life being told I remembered things incorrectly. For once, I wanted a record that could not be softened or blamed on my sensitivity. The tracking page showed delivery 6 weeks before the ceremony. No one responded. I called Mom twice and emailed Dad about the hotel. Grant sent me a joke about courthouse marriages, but never mentioned the invitation. I kept telling myself they were coordinating schedules. Those explanations lasted until dinner after the ceremony. 3 chairs remained empty. The restaurant had printed place cards for Richard, Diane, and Grant Whitaker. I asked the staff not to remove them because I kept imagining my family arriving late. The first course came, then the second. The chairs stayed empty. Noah covered my hand and asked whether I wanted to call. I looked at the untouched glasses. If they wanted to be here, they would be here. Mom called 4 days later and acted shocked. Dad claimed he never received an invitation. Grant said I probably used the wrong address. When I mentioned the tracking record, he said receptionists signed for packages constantly. Mom asked why I had not called repeatedly if I truly wanted them there. Dad accused me of arranging a secret ceremony to punish them. Within minutes, they transformed their absence into something I had done. I printed the tracking page, saved the email confirmations, and placed everything in a folder. I thought I was preserving proof for myself. I did not yet know whose signature appeared on the record, or that Grant had personally decided which moments of my life the family was allowed to see. The wedding weekend began on Friday with valet parking, monogrammed welcome bags, and my mother pretending the previous 8 months had never happened. The Lake Geneva resort faced the water, its golf course cut into perfect green lines. Grant and Claire Holloway had reserved most of the east wing. Their initials appeared on room cards, cocktail napkins, and a temporary crest above the ballroom. The guest count was exactly 299 because Claire refused to add one more person after the seating plan was finished. Mom hugged me near registration as if we had spoken that morning. She adjusted my collar and asked where Noah was. He had been pulled into preparation for a federal employment hearing in Minneapolis. He offered to drive overnight, but I told him not to exhaust himself for people who had ignored our wedding. He remained available by phone and kept copies of every document I carried. Grant greeted me with one arm and asked whether I had brought my practical little car or finally upgraded. I said I had rented something because Noah had our vehicle. Still spending important weekends apart, he said. Marriage must be going great. Mom laughed as though it were harmless. Grant held my gaze, waiting for a reaction. I gave him none. Claire was different. She thanked me for coming and apologized that we had not spent more time together. She had met me only twice, both times in restaurants where Grant controlled the conversation. Her father, Robert Holloway, ran Holloway Risk Group, a regional insurance and corporate risk company. Her mother, Margaret, served on hospital and arts boards. Her older brother, Ethan, was the company's deputy compliance officer. Grant wanted everyone to know he was not merely marrying Claire. He was joining a family whose name opened doors. Dad introduced Grant to executives as his son and future business partner, then introduced me as our records person up in Milwaukee. He had been lobbying Robert to offer Grant a senior client relations position after the honeymoon. The role included a large salary, travel privileges, and access to clients Dad had pursued for years. Dad also hoped Robert would recommend him for a regional property development advisory council. The wedding was romantic for Claire, for Dad and Grant. It was also a merger. At the rehearsal dinner, Mom seated me between a distant cousin and a dentist who assumed I was single. When I told him I was married, he looked at my ring in surprise. Apparently, no one from my family had mentioned it. Across the room, Claire told friends Grant came from a close family. Dad nodded proudly while Grant avoided my eyes. During dessert, the planner reviewed the bouquet toss. Grant called across 2 tables. Erin should stand in front. It might be her last chance. Several guests laughed. Claire frowned. She's wearing a wedding ring. Grant shrugged. She likes private ceremonies. We never know what counts with her. My fingers tightened around my fork. He knew enough about my ceremony to mock it. He knew it had been private, yet he had spent 8 months pretending the invitation never existed. My phone vibrated. Tessa Morgan, a former colleague who managed records for Dad's office building, had helped me request lawful delivery records while Noah submitted a preservation notice. Her message read, "The archived service corridor record matches the delivery time and legal approved release of the limited clip." That night, I called Noah. The footage exists. He asked whether I wanted the records sent to Robert immediately. "Not yet. I need them to tell the truth while they still think lying will protect them." "Then stay calm," he said. "Show only what you can authenticate. Let the sequence speak." I looked across the dark lake. That is why Grant should be worried. By Saturday evening, every table in the ballroom had been arranged to remind people who mattered and who was expected only to clap. Grant and Claire sat beneath a wall of white flowers with Robert, Margaret, Dad, and Mom closest to them. Ethan sat with senior executives from Hollow Risk Group. I was near the edge of the dance floor with distant relatives, far enough away that no one could mistake me for part of the central family group. The ceremony had been elegant. Claire looked happy. Grant delivered vows about honesty, loyalty, and protecting the people he loved. I watched him speak without hesitation and wondered whether he believed morality applied only during formal events. By the time dinner ended, Dad had consumed enough champagne to become sentimental and confident. He tapped his glass, stood, and adjusted his jacket. He praised Claire's family first. Then he praised Grant for carrying the Whitaker name forward with dignity. He said Grant understood tradition and had given everyone a proper wedding. He emphasized the 299 guests, the important company, and the bright future waiting for the couple. People smiled. Claire held Grant's hand. Then Dad looked at me. "And Aaron," he said, as if he had just remembered I existed. "Maybe tonight will inspire you. So, when's your turn?" The microphone carried his voice into every corner. A few guests laughed. Someone at my table whispered, "Oh no." Mom stared at her napkin. Grant's mouth curved into the smallest smile. I stood. "Why don't you ask your favorite son?" Grant's smile vanished. Dad lowered the microphone. "What does that mean?" "It means I got married 8 months ago." Claire released Grant's hand. Mom looked up sharply. "Aaron, don't exaggerate." "I'm not exaggerating. Noah and I were married in Door County. 14 people attended." Dad's face reened. "You got married without telling us I invited you." "No, you did not. I sent invitations 6 weeks before the ceremony. I emailed the details. 2. Grant pushed his chair back. "This is exactly what she does. She creates a situation, stays quiet, then waits for the most dramatic moment to blame everyone else." Claire turned toward him. "You knew she was married." Grant ignored her. "She's trying to ruin my wedding because the day isn't about her. Your wedding was never about me. My wedding should not have been about you either." Dad stepped away from the head table. "If you sent something, we would have received it." "You did receive it." I opened my clutch and removed a document envelope. I had prepared numbered copies of every record. Noah had reminded me that chaos helped liars. Sequence helped facts. I placed the first page on the nearest table. This is the certified mail tracking record. It lists your office address, the delivery date, the time, and the person who signed for the package. Dad. Lean down. Mom came beside him. Grant stayed where he was. Dad read the signature and looked at his son. "Why is your name on this?" Grant's jaw tightened. "I sign for packages all the time. The package contained invitations for you and our parents, hotel information, and a letter. You can put anything in an envelope and claim it was there. That would matter if this were the only record." Dad looked between us. "Did you receive her wedding invitation?" Grant glanced toward Ethan and the executives. The conversation was becoming a question about his honesty. "I don't remember every package delivered to the office." Claire's voice was quiet. "That isn't what he asked." Mom stepped forward. "Can we discuss this privately, Aaron? This is your brother's wedding. I sat quietly when Dad publicly asked why I wasn't married. Grant laughed. No one suggested privacy then. Dad lifted the tracking page. What exactly was inside 3 invitations? Hotel details, and a handwritten letter saying Noah and I wanted you there. Dad's hand shook. He turned to Grant. What did you do with it? Nothing. I probably left it with the office mail. Dad's confusion hardened. What? You threw it away. The ballroom fell silent. Claire watched Grant, waiting for a clear denial. He did not give one. I returned the page to its sleeve. That was only the first record. Robert Holloway rose. He was not angry yet. He was attentive, which was worse for Grant. Then everyone should answer carefully, he said. This is no longer a joke made during a toast. The drummer lowered his sticks. In the middle of 299 guests. Grant looked completely isolated. He pointed at the page. A signature proves I touched an envelope. It doesn't prove what happened after that. You're right, I said. That is why I did not rely on one signature. The second document came from the building's delivery system. Certified packages at Dad's building were scanned at reception and released only to authorized representatives. The entry listed the tracking number, time, and badge used to collect it. Tessa manages records for the building, explained. After the package appeared to be missing, I submitted a sender inquiry. Noah later sent a prez. The building confirmed that this package was released directly to Grant 23 minutes after delivery. I handed Dad the log. That still doesn't show I opened it. No, it shows you personally collected a certified package with my return address and kept it from reaching the office area. I was busy. I could have said it somewhere. Dad studied the entry. You told me the receptionist probably signed for it. I said receptionists sign for things. I didn't say this one did. You let us believe it. Grant looked around the ballroom. Can everyone stop acting like this is a criminal trial? My sister had a tiny ceremony and failed to follow up. That's the story. Claire's expression changed. How did you know it was tiny? Grant blinked. She just said 14 people. You used that description last night. I said before I told anyone the number. Maybe Grant saw something online. Mom said there was nothing online. No public announcement and no photographs until after the ceremony. Grant stared at me. You planned this. I documented it. You planned it. I removed the third set of pages. The invitations were also sent by email. Dad claimed he never saw them. 3 months later, Whitaker Commercial Properties began missing vendor correspondence. Dad complained that important emails were disappearing. So, the company's IT provider reviewed his account. Dad remembered. They said there was a routing rule problem. They found several user-created rules. One moved messages containing specific terms into a deleted item subfolder. I gave him the vendor report. It revealed no private client messages. It showed the date the rule was created, the keywords, the device identifier, and the account used. The keywords included Aaron, Whitaker, wedding, door, county, ceremony, invitation, and Noah. Mom covered her mouth. Dad read the page twice. This says the rule was created from Grant's company laptop. Grant spoke quickly. I used Dad's account for a presentation. Everyone knows that I was fixing his inbox because it was a disaster. Ethan leaned forward. Did you have written authorization to create deletion rules on another user's account? It's my father's company. That was not my question. Dad's face had gone gray. Why would you create a rule using Aaron's name I didn't? The system could have done it automatically. Ethan shook his head. A rule with multiple custom keywords does not create itself. I continued before Grant could redirect the argument. The report shows the rule was created 2 days after the package arrived. It stayed active until Dad's audit. My invitation email entered his account the next morning and was moved from the inbox within seconds. Dad turned to Mom. "Did you receive Aaron's email?" Mom looked frightened. "I don't know. Grant helped clean my inbox. He said I had too much spam." Claire stood. Before whose wedding no one answered. I handed Mom a delivery confirmation proving her server accepted my message. Her hands trembled. Grant looked at me with open hatred. "You have always been obsessed with proving people wrong." "No, I became good at proving facts because this family kept telling me reality was negotiable." Dad slammed the report onto the table. Why Grant finally changed tactics? Because it was embarrassing. She was marrying a lawyer none of us knew in a civil ceremony with 14 people. No church, no proper reception. Dad was already talking to Robert about the advisory council. We were building relationships. Then Aaron sends an invitation that makes the family look fractured. "You made it fractured," I said. I protected Mom and Dad from being forced to approve something they didn't respect. Mom's expression softened. Maybe he thought he was helping. Claire looked at her. He deleted his sister's wedding invitation. "He made a terrible decision," Mom said. But perhaps he believed he was preventing conflict. I had watched her perform that transformation my entire life. Harm became misunderstanding. Control became concern. Grant knew she would rescue him because she always had. Robert looked at Claire. "Did Grant ever tell you Aaron was married?" "No." "Did he tell you his family missed the ceremony?" "No." Grant reached for Claire's hand. She moved it behind her back. "This was 8 months ago," he said. "It has nothing to do with us. It became about us when you lied to me." Claire answered. I placed my hand on the final envelope. There is one more record. This one shows exactly what Grant did after collecting the package. I did not raise my voice because Grant was doing enough damage without my help. He stepped around the head table and pointed at the envelope. "Whatever you think you have, you obtained it illegally." "No," Noah's voice said through my phone. I had called him when Dad began his toast and left the phone near my water glass. The material was released after a written preservation request. Proof that Aaron was the sender. Confirmation of the tracking number. And review by the building's legal department. Noah said the clip is limited to the service corridor and the package in question. No private office footage was requested. Grant stared at the phone. "You set me up." "No. I preserved a record before you could claim it never existed." Ordinary corridor footage was retained for 30 days. 10 days after my wedding. Noah requested preservation of the relevant time window. After legal review and tenant authorization. Council released a 3-minute silent clip. I placed the clip on a tablet where Dad, Mom, Robert, Margaret, and Ethan could see it. The timestamp appeared. The service elevator opened. Grant entered with the certified package, checked the hallway, and opened it beside a utility counter. He removed the first invitation and read it. He unfolded my letter to Dad and Mom, scanned the hotel sheet, checked the ceremony date on his phone, and read the page again. There was no confusion in his movements. Then he tore the invitations in half. Mom made a sound beside me. Grant put the papers back inside, pushed everything into a secured waste container, and photographed the tracking label before leaving. The video ended. Grant's first response was not an apology. "There's no sound." Ethan looked at him. What explanation would sound provide? I could have panicked. "You collected the package, opened it, read it, tore the contents, discarded them, photographed the label, accessed Dad's account, and created a deletion rule. 2 days later." I said, "That is not panic. That is a sequence." Dad pushed the tablet away. "You knew about the wedding." Grant turned toward him. "I was protecting what we were building." What were we building? Our reputation. The relationship. The advisory position. My future. You always said Aaron's choices made the family look divided. Dad stopped. Grant had not created the hierarchy alone. Dad had spent years teaching him that appearances mattered more than people, and that I could be sacrificed without consequence. Claire removed her wedding ring and placed it beside her glass. Grant froze. "What are you doing?" "I'm making sure I do not confuse a ceremony with trust. This has nothing to do with our marriage. It has everything to do with our marriage. You erased your sister's wedding because it interfered with the story you wanted people to believe. Then you let your father humiliate her in front of 299 guests while you smiled. I didn't know he would ask that. You knew he believed she was unmarried." Grant stepped closer. "We can discuss this privately. You had 8 months to speak privately." Robert looked at Grant. The position at Hollow Risk Group required judgment, discretion, and access to confidential client information. The position has nothing to do with a family disagreement. It does when the disagreement includes unauthorized email access, deliberate deletion of records, concealment, and repeated false statements. Ethan folded his hands. "Based on what we have seen, I would not approve elevated system access without a complete investigation." Grant looked at Robert. "You already offered me the job. I discussed an expected offer. It will not be issued." The words struck Grant harder than anything I had said. Dad stepped forward. "Robert, whatever he did was personal. There is no reason to damage the business relationship." Robert's expression hardened. "You watched your son use company resources to manipulate your communications, and your response is to protect a business relationship. I am also withdrawing my recommendation for your advisory council appointment." Dad's face collapsed. Mom turned to me. "Why did you have to do this here?" Dad asked me a public question. Grant laughed publicly. He had 8 months to tell the truth. All he had to do tonight was stop Dad before he used my life as a joke. "You could have warned us." I sent an invitation. I called. I emailed. Every warning became another chance for you to blame me. Mom began crying. "We are still your family. You were my family when 3 reserved chairs sat empty at my wedding." Grant moved around the table. "You ruined my life." "No. You threw away the first piece yourself." Claire asked the planner to move her belongings to her parents' suite. She would not continue the reception or leave for the honeymoon. The band was dismissed. Guests collected purses and jackets. Dad tried speaking with Robert near the doors, but Robert walked past him. Margaret left with Claire. Grant remained beside the flower wall while workers extinguished the candles. The room had been designed to display his arrival into a more powerful family. Instead, everyone watched that future disappear. I returned the documents to my clutch. I did not feel victorious. I had invented nothing. I had only refused to let him continue benefiting from a lie. As I walked toward the doors, Dad called my name. "What do you expect us to do now?" I stopped without turning. "Believe the truth. Then live with what it says about all of you." 3 days after the wedding that never became a marriage, my father tried to turn accountability into a transaction. A courier arrived at Noah's office with a cashier's check for $25,000 and a folded note in Dad's handwriting. It contained 6 words for peace. "Stop embarrassing the family." Dad had never reimbursed the unused hotel rooms or apologized for missing my wedding. Once his board recommendation disappeared and guests began asking questions, peace suddenly had a price. Noah scanned the check-in note for our records. His office returned both by insured courier with a formal no-contact letter. It stated that I did not accept compensation, settlement, confidentiality, or any obligation to protect the family's reputation. Dad, Mom, and Grant were instructed to direct further communication through Noah's office and not contact my employer, appear at my home, or use relatives to pressure me. Dad called the letter vindictive in a voicemail he left before I blocked him. Mom left 11 messages in 2 days. First, she said the hallways were overreacting. Then, Grant had made one mistake. Then, Claire had never loved him if she could leave so quickly. By the fifth message, she wanted me to call Robert and explain that Grant acted out of loyalty. By the ninth, she said Grant was depressed. In the final message, she whispered, "I know what he did was wrong, but was it worth losing your whole family?" That question clarified everything. Mom still believed Grant made the decision, but I created the consequences. Dad humiliated me, but I damaged the family by refusing to absorb it quietly. Even after seeing Grant tear my invitation apart, she wanted me to repair his life. I did not respond. Grant sent one email from a new address before Noah's office blocked it. Claire had begun annulment proceedings. Holloway Risk Group had withdrawn all employment discussions. Dad removed him from client-facing duties while the company's IT vendor reviewed his access. Grant accused me of waiting for the most destructive moment to expose him. He was right that I chose the moment. I could have confronted him privately. He would have denied his motive, offered a selective apology, and convinced Mom the matter was resolved. Dad would have called it sibling conflict. Grant would have married Claire and accepted a position requiring clients to trust him with private information. My family would have continued claiming I excluded them from my wedding. Their version would have survived because correcting it made them uncomfortable. The public setting did not create Grant's conduct. It prevented my family from rewriting it. Dad lost the advisory council recommendation and 2 potential clients who had attended the wedding. His company did not collapse, and I never expected it to. Consequences do not always arrive as dramatic destruction. Sometimes they are closed doors, careful questions, withdrawn trust, and invitations that no longer come. Grant lost the role, his honeymoon, and his marriage. Claire later sent one message through Noah. "I am sorry your wedding was treated as disposable. Thank you for showing me what he believed he had the right to erase." I replied, "I'm sorry you learned it on your wedding day. We did not become friends. We did not need to. Some people enter your life only long enough to confirm you are not imagining what happened." Dad kept Grant employed but removed his executive title. Mom moved between their homes, comforting both men and describing herself as trapped in the middle. She was not in the middle. She had spent so many years standing beside the person causing harm that accountability felt like an attack on her. 2. I removed my parents as emergency contacts, closed a shared account Mom still monitored, and updated my medical directives, beneficiaries, and estate documents. Noah and I changed our building access code. I blocked their numbers, email addresses, and social accounts. Those steps felt administrative. Boundaries were documented decisions. Access revoked. Permissions removed. Instructions clarified. The door stayed closed because I stopped giving people keys. Dad later appeared in my office lobby demanding 5 minutes. Security called me before allowing him upstairs. I referred them to the no contact instruction and they escorted him out. He left a note saying a daughter should not treat her father like a stranger. I returned it through Noah. Dad was not a stranger. A stranger would not know exactly which weakness to use against me. Distance was not punishment. It was recognition. Mom asked my aunt to invite me to lunch without revealing that Dad and Grant would attend. My aunt admitted the plan when I asked directly. I declined and told her not to act as a messenger again. She reminded me that parents did not live forever. I told her limited time was a reason to behave honestly, not a reason to demand access without accountability. Snorts, 8 months later. Noah and I returned to Dew County for our first anniversary. We ate at the same restaurant and requested the same table. The manager remembered us and asked whether more family would be joining. "No," I said. "Just the people who chose to be here." There were no empty reserved chairs this time. After dinner, Noah and I walked beside the lake. My wedding ring caught the last light. I thought about the ballroom, the 299 guests, Dad's raised glass, and Grant's face when the truth stopped obeying him. For years, I imagined justice would feel like an apology. None came without excuses. Yet closure did not require their agreement. The truth had been established. My family could deny its meaning, but they could no longer deny the record. Noah took my hand. Do you regret it? I knew he meant the reception, the evidence, and the moment I decided silence was no longer the price of belonging. No. I said I regret how long I believed protecting them was the same as loving them. Some people call it family only, while they still have permission to hurt you. They call silence loyalty, and boundaries cruelty. They expect the person who is harmed to become smaller so everyone else can remain comfortable. Walking away is not cruelty when staying requires you to disappear. My family finally knew the truth about my wedding. They simply no longer had access to the life I built after it. Thank you for watching another emotional story with us. All characters on Situations are fictional, made only for entertainment and reflection. We hope it reminds you that the strongest response to manipulation is often clarity, seeing the pattern, trusting yourself, and refusing to be pulled back into it. Once you recognize the cycle, you gain the power to break it and choose something healthier.